Morning class, this is Mrs. Miller here. Wanted to give you a video lesson to introduce our new math unit. This is chapter 16 and we are diving into a measuring unit that is called the metric system. I'm really excited to share this with you. I will be spending some time working on understanding what is the metric measurement system, reviewing what we have done in class already this year about measurement, and then I will be combining lessons 134 and 135 into this video to review 4 pieces of the metric measurement system. So let's begin. So something that I want you to understand is that when we are measuring things such as distance, how far your house is to school, right? So that's a distance. We know that there is space between both of those locations, so that we can measure that distance. We also know that we could look at how much liquid fills up a container, that's capacity. So we're looking at liquids that we can measure. We also understand that we have we can measure weight. We can see what is the weight of an object as well as how much mass it takes up. And we can measure temperature, the hot or the coldness of something. So if you notice, there are 2 types of measurement units. We have what is a customary unit. We studied this in class already this year. Customary units of measurement are used in America. We talk about the words such as inches, feet, yards, miles, cups, pints, quarts, gallons, ounces, pounds, and Fahrenheit temperature. We talk about these things and we understand them even since birth. They're in our language, our culture, our lifestyle uses these words. When you read a recipe, it might ask you for 2 cups of sugar. And that is something that is normal to you. When we look at the second unit, we see metric. This is not so familiar to us because our life is not revolved around the measurement system with metric units. The measurement metric units is actually used almost all around the world, except in a few places, including America. So when I traveled to Romania, and I lived in Romania for a few months, when I had to read signs or read recipes or even just try to look for things that were familiar to me as I was in a different country and not speaking their language fluent, I knew that the way they measured units was different because they used the metric system and they use to measure distance, they generally use meters. They also use liquid liters, and for weight, grams, and for temperature, Celsius. I have one more small example. I also just talked about 2 cups of sugar. That would actually be more like a weight. We can have 2 cups of sugar, but that's a weight because it's not a liquid. But I really like to watch the show, The Great British Baking Show. These people measure their sugar. They don't measure it in cups. We need to read some. They measure their sugar, their dry materials, flour, yeast, sugar, baking soda, baking powder. They measure all of that in what is called grams. So we really are studying the measurement of a different lifestyle that we don't use daily, but people all around the world do. So I just want to help you understand that when we have measurement and we want to see how much or how long or how far something is or how much it weighs, there's 2 types of measurement. So we are going into the more challenging metric unit in this unit, and I think we'll be fine, but it will be uncomfortable. It will be something that we're just gonna start out slow and put into our familiarity. And we're going to start with distance. I have this highlighted here in pink because today's lesson is just going to all focus on distance. So what is the distance between two locations? And when I would talk about my house to school, I'd say, oh, my house is several miles away. I would use a unit that is big enough to describe a length that is large. So I wouldn't say, oh, it's 1,000,000 inches away. I would use that phrase miles to talk about that distance length. So we're going to dive into when to use meters and what other words we can to look at distance. But I wanted to give you a fun picture to see the great memories we've had in third grade. This was part of our unit that we did with our measuring for liquid. So we were learning about cups and pints and quarts in December, and we took our math lesson into the kitchen, and I remember the really the great enjoyment we had actually using real cups and liquid to explore what a pint and a cup and a quart and a gallon were. So if we were together and we were studying that liquid lesson, obviously I'd want to jump right back into the kitchen. But I wanted to give that picture for you just to make you smile. It makes me smile for sure. All right, let's jump back into the metric system. So when we're talking about length, I'm going to spend maybe a few minutes on this paper, this screen, and then we're going to jump into a few examples because there are 4 units of length that we want to have locked in our brain for the metric system. We have millimeter. Millimeter is a very tiny measurement. If you see the examples, it would be the width of a ladybug, the width of a black ant, the width of an eraser, even the thickness of lined paper. Okay, so this is just how thick it is, and we know that it's not very thick. So we know that millimeters measure very tiny units. We then jump into the next level of measurement, and we see centimeters. Centimeters are what we see on a ruler that is the opposite of inches. So you'll be using a online system today to measure objects, and you'll be using centimeters. So we can measure centimeters with a ruler. That's something that's very familiar to us. Some of the objects that we can use to measure length with centimeters are the width of a fingernail, maybe the height of a button, the length of a push pin, or even the width of a penny. So as you notice, we went from tiny to small. So these things are still rather, small, but they're not tiny. Millimeters would be used to measure the smallest of units. Then we go to centimeters. 2 more are meters. Meters are what would be equal to like yards. So if I am looking at the length of a soccer field or the height of a tree or the length of a school bus, it is too small to say something like a mile. The soccer field's not a mile long. That's our customary unit. But we would say it's a meter. And there are several meters in a soccer field. If you've ever been to a athletic field, there is a high school spring sport that's called track. And students run around the track to test to see who's the fastest or who can run the longest distance. And that high school track that's even around like a football game, if you've ever seen something like that, or if you've driven by that track, one of the things that was always connected to me when I ran track in high school, I always remember that they were 400 meters around the track because the track was broken up into 4 sections and they all had 100 meters. So we don't say, oh, look how many yards that runner was running. we go into that metric system when we talk about that track measurement, and that is a way that we use the word meter frequently in our English language. Let's go on to kilometer, or a kilometer is the distance that we use when we are measuring a long distance. This would be equal to like a mile. So if we're traveling from one state to the next, or we're just saying how far away one vehicle is to the shopping center, or if we're looking at how far a runner is running a big distance, we can use the biggest measurement length, and it's a kilometer. So these are interesting because I expect them to be brand new, but I also expect that you understand how items are growing in size as we go from millimeter to centimeter to meter to kilometer. And as we are understanding that this is also how we would measure normal things in our life, but we are not using inches or feet or yards or miles. We are talking about a type of measurement system called the metric system. So I'm going to go through a few more slides with you and do a few practice pieces. We're going to focus on centimeters and meters first. As we move forward, I want you to understand that as we measure things, God gave us this tool. We see that math helps people, helps others. So when I am in a situation where I am measuring something, it's allowing me to communicate, it's allowing me to have understanding when we have math measurements. So thank you, Lord, for teaching us that. All right, centimeter. Here we go. So we're going to just review centimeter and meter. Centimeter is represented by the abbreviation cm, centi, meter. So we have cm, we take that and abbreviate. Meter is just represented by an m. So now let's think, if I had a mouse pad, what would I use to measure that? Would I use a whole meter or would I use a centimeter? I'm going to give you a second to think, and then I'll show up the answer. And the answer is centimeter. We would use that small unit to measure the length of a mouse pad. Sidewalk. This would be something that maybe is in front of a church or a house or a shopping center. They're usually broken up into rectangle blocks. This one would be a meter. Even though we're not talking about a huge portion of several meters or maybe 1 meter, it would still be the right unit to measure. It would be, we wouldn't really sit down and say, wow, this sidewalk is 100 centimeters long. We would just probably say it's 1 or 2 meters. All right, a phone, I'm going to say maybe like a cell phone, the length of a cell phone, we would do that in centimeters. Let's keep going for a few more examples. Sewing needle. What do you think? Pause for a second and I'll show you the answer. How would we measure that? Centimeters, great job. Fence. We installed a fence around our backyard a few summers ago. And it would be really silly if I said, oh man, my fence is 3,456 centimeters long. That would be the wrong unit to measure because we'd want to break that down into bigger pieces and call that meters. As well as the soccer field, we saw this example already. That would be a meter. Okay, so when we're looking at perimeter, perimeter is something that we've studied, it's something that we're confident in understanding, but we also want to recognize that meters is a unit of measurement that we often see in length and in story problems and perimeter problems. So what's the perimeter of this rectangle? I'm going to give you just a minute to figure that out. I'm going to actually probably time it to a minute so I don't give you the answer without you working it out. So we have a rectangle that has a measurement of 3 meters tall and 4 meters long. Can you please find the perimeter of this rectangle? All right, so hopefully you did some simple math, or maybe you wrote this down. To find the perimeter, we would add all of the sides up. So we have 3 and 4, and that total will be 14. But we can't forget the unit of measurement, because right now 14 doesn't mean anything, but when you say 14 meters, you say the perimeter is 14 meters, I understand it is measuring the length around an object. All right, let's go ahead and dive into the story problem. Actually, I'm going to move on so I get to a different story problem at the end of this unit, just because I want to go into kilometers a little bit more. All right, so if we're measuring this Bible, what would I say? Would I say that this Bible is 20 centimeters tall or wide, or would I say that this is 20 meters tall or wide? All right, the answer would be centimeters. So we are using centimeters and meters to measure. Now we're going to go into kilometers for a little bit. I just want to explain to you that a kilometer is measured with a km, and a kilometer is equal to 1,000 meters. So this is where the unit of the metric system is different. We do not use whole numbers. In our unit, we understood that 3 feet equals 1 yard. And as a kilometer, we understand that this is 1,000. All right, let's keep going. If we see a truck driving down the road, are we going to understand, are we going to say that that truck is 1,000 meters long or more? Because then that's what we would use to measure with kilometers. However, I know that we should use meters to measure a truck, because I'm sure that it's not going to be 1,000 meters long, just that one truck. But if I'm traveling, if I'm taking a long trip from one place to the next, maybe to see a store, then I would know that it's probably more than 1,000 meters, and I would measure in kilometers or kilometers. All right, this is a shoe. Let's see what we have here. Centimeters. We wouldn't use meters or kilometers. We would go back to that smaller unit of centimeters. A tissue box. What do you think? How would we measure a tissue box? Centimeters. Outdoor track. I did talk about this example. It could be meters or kilometers, depending on how many laps you're going around it. So that is really cool. All right, so let's take it to a meter to centimeter. Let's look at how we convert and break it down. So let's see how much 1 meter is equal to a centimeter. This is where I like the metric system, because it gets really easy right here. It's just 100. So 100 centimeters equals 1 whole meter. So now 200 centimeters equals 2 meters. So we don't have to measure all of these things with different units. It's just skip counting. So we have 100 centimeters equals 1 meter, 200 centimeters equals 2 meters, 300 centimeters equals 3 meters. Keep going with me. 500 centimeters equals 5 meters. 800 centimeters equals 8 meters. So that's a really easy way to convert and understand that 100 little tiny centimeters equals that 1 meter. And that reminds me back to the sidewalk, right? If I have maybe a sidewalk that's 120 centimeters long, I wouldn't say it just with, oh, this sidewalk is really nice. It's about 100 centimeters long. I would use that measurement, that larger piece of measurement, and say, oh, this sidewalk's about 1 meter. Then this is the best part too, because when we go from meters to kilometers, look at what we see here. We don't skip count by 100, we skip count by 1,000. So 1,000 meters equals 1 kilometer, and 2,000 for 2, 4,000 for 4, 6,000 for 6, and 7,000 for 7. We're looking at understanding that meters are the smaller units down in the kilometers. And there's 1,000 meters in 1 kilometer. So let's see what we would do to find the length of a pencil. Centimeters, meters, and kilometers. Yeah, I'm going to go through these ones pretty quickly. Swimming pool, meters. Height of a mountain, I like that example. Kilometers. Height of a slide, meters. So this is one of our last ones that we'll do here, and then I'll explain our practice work. The length of a house. This one's a little tricky because we have to think. Would I use 1,000 meters? Would I use 1 kilometer to measure the length of a house? Would it be several hundred centimeters? I think the best way to measure the length of a house is by meters, and understanding that it might be a few meters, might be lots of meters, but it's definitely not 1,000 meters to then equal a kilometer. Right, so let's jump into our work that we have today for our practice. Something that I'm really excited about is giving you understanding that there are no paper worksheets this week in our practice math. No paper worksheets. I've made everything digital. This is a document that you will use to show your understanding of length in the metric system. So I put this right here just as a reminder for you. After you watch this video, this could be something that you refer back to. I really like these Google Slides. I'm going to make a copy for everybody, and you get to actually use this and write on it and move the pieces around it just like it's your own worksheet. What I want you to know is that there are sometimes pieces where we have to drag. So it says drag the unit. So then what you'll do is you will just take all of these pieces and you will put them in the right category of understanding if that's a metric unit or a customary unit. So that's one example of a worksheet type page you'll do today. This one is right in the best unit of measurement for each object, and we are using the metric system. So if I had a sun, if I had actual, like the real sun, these are not scale, would I use a centimeter to measure the sun's length? Would I do that? Would I say the sun is 1,000,000 centimeters long, or would I use a different measurement? So go ahead and look at all of these options and then type in the box the unit that you would use to measure. I think that this is actually the same page. I think I'm going to do this format. I like this one too because then it's sorting. So this was one of our examples, a mountain. Would I use centimeters to measure the mountain, meters, kilometers, millimeters? So then you would take this and you would put that into the right category. You would drag those pieces. This one I'm really excited about. I love that we can go digital on this ruler. You are going to measure each item in centimeters. So you'll have to understand the measurement starts at 0 and goes to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So just as an example, this piece of a crayon is 9 centimeters long, and you would type your work right here. Okay, so where this box is, you would type your answer. All of these boxes are open and available for you to take away the words typed here, and then add that. And I'm going to put those words back in for type here, so you know. So there's 2 pages like that. And then this is going to be fun. This is something that we would have done in the classroom, but I want to do this in your house. Use a ruler in your own house to measure and find measurements in your house using centimeters. So we are only using centimeters. I want that to be clear to you as we are moving forward. I am hoping that everybody has a ruler in their house. If that's something that is not available to you today, we can make a plan and we can work through how I would like you to move forward with that. But I am expecting and hoping that every house does have Every house does have, I don't think I'm going to get that there. Every house does have a ruler. So please use a ruler to measure an unsharpened pencil. If you only have a sharpened one, that's fine too. Use centimeters to measure the height of a chapter book. And then you get to pick. You get to pick 3 choices right here. You get to tell me what you're measuring. Remember that we're not measuring the length of possibly the length of a door, how tall a door is. That would be several centimeters long. So try to find objects that are smaller that would make sense to use with centimeters. I would then, if we were looking at a door, want to use a door, you might want to measure the length of a doorknob. Instead of actually just the whole door. So this is our work that you'll use today. Everybody's going to have their own copy in Google Classroom. That is an end and a review to lessons 134 and 135. I know that this video was a little bit long, but it just reviewed 2 lessons together, gave you some examples and understanding the customary unit versus metric unit. And as we always introduce a new chapter, a new lesson, this is something that will be a little bit more detailed because of it being new understanding. So thank you. I will talk to you guys soon. I miss you. I hope you guys have a great time and a great day today. Let me know if there's anything I can do to help you. Bye.